Okay? And now we can start with the lecture number 4. Title is Mies van der Rohe, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, exactly pronunciation, van der Rohe, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and the myth of the glass architecture. In 1851, in London, was held the first great exhibition. It was housed in the Crystal Palace, built by Joseph Paxton, a modular structure made of prefabricated cast iron system of beams and pillars, supporting sheets of glass and a glazing roof. It was built on a cladding grid of 244 meters, composing a plan 534 meters long, 39 meters wide, that in the central nave reached 33 meters of height. It created more than 70,000 square meters of completely free exhibition space. You remember? Yassin Peter Behrens AG turbine factory, built in 1909 in Berlin. This industrial building is a modern temple dedicated to the new age of production. And do you remember this? We have also seen the Fagus factory, designed in 1911, inaugurated in 1913 by Walter Gropius, Gropius, and Adolf Meyer. This building is a curtain wall structure. Yellow brick piers hold iron frames that support glass panels, allowing for fully glazed corners, creating the illusion of continuous glass walls. In 1914, Bruno Taut, the same generation of Gropius, he was born in 1880, built the pavilion of the glass industry for the Werkbund exhibition of Köln in Germany, as the celebration of all the possibilities of employing glass in architectural construction. The pavilion is built on a circular plan, above which glass block walls form an axial cylindrical chamber culminating in a prismatic dome made of glass. The chamber is lined with polychromatic glass mosaics and glass blocks that also form for the stairs, reflecting and amplifying the light. A frieze running on the dome is inscribed with aphorisms from the publication Glass Architecture, published by the novelist and poet Paul Scherbart, that celebrated the vision for a new culture that uses glass as a symbol of renovation. Among them, aphorisms you have, glass brings a new era. We feel sorry for the brick culture. You remember this? In fact, the example of a Chrysler Corporation half-ton truck plant designed by Albert Kahn in 1937-1938 shows the use of glass in industrial architecture. And you remember the role of the industrial architecture for modern architectonic culture. And now, our hero today, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, that was born in 1886, was died in 1969. Mies, we can call Mies, is one of the most important protagonists of 20th century architecture. He was born in Aachen in 1886, but later moved to Berlin, where he had his first commissions. You can read here the bibliography. The line. You know that I remember it's very important to know that he started working as a draftsman for Peter Behrens. And in fact, under his influence, he discovered the architecture of Carl Friedrich Schinkel, who remained a fundamental example of classicism. Okay, in autumn 1921, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, or Mies, took part in a competition for a skyscraper in Friedrichstrasse in Berlin. And for this project, he proposed a prismatic, star-shaped skyscraper composed by 3 separated arms of 20 stories. The internal structure system allowed for facades entirely covered in glass. This is a further elaboration of a glass skyscraper, and you can compare the glass proposal by Mies van der Rohe with the historical center of this Berlin, or ideal town. To quote Mies, these curves were determined by sufficient illumination of the interior, the massing of the building viewed from the street, and lastly the play of reflections. That's beautiful. The elaboration on the theme of the glass skyscraper is evident also in the work of the Russian artist and architect L. Lisinski. In 1926, returning from Germany, he published his design for skyhooks, or horizontal skyscrapers, L-shaped structures formed by 180 meters wide slabs made of steel and glass, suspended above ground. The German pavilion is one of the important works by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. He designed for the International Exposition of 1929 in Barcelona. It's composed on a grid of steel columns, interjecting a series of rectangular planes. Horizontally, they form floors and roof. Vertically, they define walls. And remember, horizontally, they form floors and roof. Vertically, they define walls. The pavilion is raised on a plinth of travertine, accessed by an external stair that reveal all the structure. The building develops horizontally with a low roof. The interlocking of horizontal and vertical planes blurs the distinction between external and internal areas, not divided by a fixed perimeter. The articulation of the space is unconventional, defined only by independent wall segments disposed asymmetrically to create a free, flowing, continuous space. This is wonderful. Pay attention, because this is a reconstruction, not the original. It's a reconstruction. You can see now in Barcelona, you can see the reconstruction. Okay? Rich materials build the composition, like colored walls in Roman travertine, a bright freestanding partition in golden onyx, green Titian marble outside, glass walls. 8 chromium cruciform columns allow for continuous external facades and an open plan. Thanks to these slender steel columns, the vertical partitions have no structural functions, and the roof seems to flow above the space. Please stay silent in front of this picture. It's a reconstruction, but it's very important for us. All the furniture was designed by Mies and his collaborator Lily Reich, including the Barcelona chair, it's a famous piece of industrial design, a seamless frame of stainless steel with ivory-colored tapestry. The interior space is juxtaposed to 2 rectangular pools, mirroring the green transparent glass and green marble of the walls. and completing the proportional composition of the plan. Remember, the proportional composition of the plan. Black glass-lined pools, while a sculptor, very famous sculptor, by Georg Kolbe, seems to inhabit the external space of the pavilion. With continuous reflections, the free-flowing space seems to multiply. And now, another example of the use of glass in a residential building. The Tugendhat house, built in 1930, in a step site overlooking Brno, Czechoslovakia. It's a freestanding three-story villa facing southwest. It has a steel skeleton of the same cruciform columns of German pavilion in Barcelona, with brick masonry and reinforced concrete ceiling. Archival drawings. The ground floor hosts the open space living areas, the terrace and the kitchen. On the first floor are the entrance at street level and private rooms, while the basement houses utility facilities. The living area is divided in 4 functional areas by partitions, but remains open. The furniture and lighting fixtures were designed by Mies van der Rohe, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and his collaborator, Lily Reich. This is a historical photo. A straight wall of onyx faces a group of Barcelona and Tugendhat chairs, chrome-plated with emerald green and silver grey tapestry. Together with the glass walls and silver grey shantung silk curtains, these colors and texture build the architectures, sign the architecture, sign the spirit of architecture by Mies van der Rohe. The outer glass walls connect the living areas with the garden at the back of the villa. You can see the different kind of material. And wonderful open view toward the city increase the feeling of an endless space from inside to outside. And while the wall on the street side creates a drop between the street and the actual structure, almost cut in two. And now we can also see how the modern architects organize their version of the glass houses. Started from Mies van der Rohe. In this lecture, I want to show you the topic of glass house. Look at this example. It's very important chapter of the history of modern architecture, but not well known, really. The Maison de Verre, meaning glass house, in Paris, designed from 1928 until 1932, inauguration, as a collaboration between Pierre Charot, that was the interior and furniture designer, Bernard Biovet, a Dutch architect, and Louis Dalbé, craftsman, metal worker. But Pierre Charot signed the architectural drawings. The main elements of the design are alternating transparency of forms, simplicity of materials, and alternating use of industrial fixtures and traditional decor. The design employed steel, glass, and translucent glass blocks walls, as evident in the facades. Among the industrial elements were steel beams, perforated metal sheets, and industrial mechanisms for opening and closing windows and doors. Axonometric view and plan. 3-story high, the house accommodates a private residence as well as a medical suite for the owner on the ground floor. This was achieved by creating a series of folding and rotating screens that divide at need the areas. The medical suite clearly shows the juxtaposition of industrial and traditional features. The patient waiting area and the medical room of Dr. d'Alsace. On the first floor, he housed the Dr. d'Alsace study, while the second floor develops with a gallery overlooking the study. This is Dr. d'Alsace's private study. In fact, the space is also defined by a series of industrial pilasters, as well as mechanical and electrical system. This is the Dr. d'Alsace private study. And you have also you can see the difference between the traditional and industrial elements that define the interior. Dr. d'Alsace studying the the interior, the steel columns, electrical and mechanical systems, bookshelves. This is another important example of a glass house. The name is Crystal House. It was designed by the American architect George Frederick Keck with his brother. He founded a firm, Keck and Keck. And this house was designed for the Century of Progress International Exposition in Chicago. in 1934. And this is a prefabricated steel frame structure with fully glazed facades. It was assembled with modular components. The night view shows clearly the predominance of glass in this laboratory of modernity. And now we come back to Mies van der Rohe, because after the first year of his career in Germany and under the Nazi dictatorship, in 1938 he was forced to move to the United States. Remember that Mies van der Rohe was the last director of Bauhaus School in Berlin that was closed by the Nazis. And after this event, Mies was forced to move to the United States. He also traveled in Wisconsin to meet Frank Lloyd Wright, but exactly in 1938, Mies accepted to be the director of the architectural program of the Armour Institute of Technology, after as well known as Illinois Institute of Technology. He became director of this little school. It's really a little school in 1938. Now it's a very important school in the field of architecture, design, and urban planning. Really, the school, Illinois Institute of Technology, became the first clear client of Mies van der Rohe. In fact, the first American project by Mies was the master plan of the campus. The final outline incorporates clusters of buildings, each grouped around a central plaza within a symmetrical plan. The overall plan is made to look as a continuous space. I remember this concept, continuous space. You can read, every building is constructed on a cubic bay, 731 meters by 731 meters, 366 meters high, and the same grid compose the facades with an exposed steel structure supporting glass or brick panels. The reed is amplified in the administrative building and library, 1944-1945, with glass bays 19 and 50 meters wide and 9 and 14 meters high. The long facades are qualified by ribbon windows, supported by steel columns and brick panels. The corner employs a combination of different columns. The crown hall was designed from 1950 to house a workshop of the Institute of Design and Planning and the Department of Architecture, directed by Mies. He was named after the co-founder of the Material Service Corporation, Henry Crown. He was the founder of S.R. Crown. It's a very important company in the United States. Mies designed a grill structure realized by Frank Cornaker, made of 4 exposed steel beams bridging the depth of the building that suspends the entire ceiling under them. Remember, 4 exposed steel beams bridging the depth of the building. The system avoids the use of any interior columns, creating an uninterrupted space. 36 and 6 and 67 meters wide, 5 and 5 meters high, suitable for any workshop activity. Mies said that this is a very important work for teaching and to study. Teaching activities are housed at the ground floor, putting all technical facilities to the basement, underground. The whole is raised on the plinth and reaching through a steel stairway cladded in travertine, creating an ascensional path toward the building. The facade is defined by wide, clear glazed glass panels in the upper part and translucent panes in the lower part to veil the interior from the outside and filter light. When needed, Venetian blinds can also shield the upper windows. The crown hall reveals itself as an expressive building with a strong structural form. And now, the core of this lecture that you know in the MOOC course, but now I can repeat it because it's really a masterpiece. The Fensworth House, that was realized by Mies in 1946 at Plano, in Illinois, as a country retreat in a wonderful place, with Fox River and other. See the map of the state of Illinois, Chicago, Oak Park. Here, do you remember Oak Park? And Plano. The client was Dr. Edith Fensworth, a professor of medicine and physician who dedicated her retirement after this experience translating in Italy, really in Italy. He moved in Italy to translate Italian poetry, such as Eugenio Montale and Salvatore Quasimodo. That's a wonderful drawing. It's an emotion. in front of the drawing by Mies. The house is designed as a space between two horizontal planes, floor and roof slabs, enclosed in a plate glass skin and raised above the ground. The plan is organized in two different floor slabs, an entry platform leading to the house and the house slab itself. Okay, the entry platform and the house. Both structures are raised above ground on exterior steel T-beams. A first set of stairs leads to the terrace platform, and another one leads from the platform to the height, raised 1.5 meters above ground. A platform and a house, a classical temple. While the main house slab is 8.8 meters wide and 23.5 meters long, raised on 8 pilasters. The Farnsworth House is a masterpiece, a witness of Mies' design concept. Space is defined only by essential elements and set completely within nature. Less is more, said Mies, as in nature. The exposed steel skeleton was completely painted white after being ground down in place and contains the glass panes completely. AWT section columns set 8.5 meters apart suspend the house. Terrace, steps, and floor slab of the main house are cladded in travertine, enforcing the wide feature of Farnsworth House. The glass panels are inside the steel structure and are 0.6 centimeters thick. Developing from floor to ceiling in modular elements, 2.9 meter high and 3.2 meter wide. Farnsworth House seems suspended mid-air by magnetism between horizontal elements and columns. To highlight this nature, interior partitions were avoided almost completely. Heating unit, fireplace, and bathrooms are all brought together in a large wood paneled box. You can see. The kitchen equipment is developed in the back towards the rear of the house. Set aside within the overall house. The wood box never quite reached the roof, except for its core. This glass house was defined in 1952 as a quantity of air enclosed between floor and a roof. A quantity of air. The house was also fitted with sliding curtains of champagne-colored raw silk. This is a quotation of the radio interview Miss Van der Rohe, because Dr. Fensworth, Eddie Fensworth, complained that the house was inhabitable, lacking any privacy and showing many problems. And she took legal actions against Miss, and in the end sold the house, and she moved to Italy, and never really sharing Miss' purpose of creating a crystal for the doctor. But actually, Fensworth House is a U.S. National Historic Landmark. A further interpretation was Miss' theoretical project for a house 15 and 2 made square, the 50 by 50 house. A glass box with a thicker core, a roof of exposed crossing beams, and 4 columns at the center of each side. The Lakeshore Drive apartments were built by Miss from 1948 to 1950 on the Lake Michigan in Chicago as twin apartments tower, another wonderful masterpiece. The towers are developed from the structural logic of steel armature, finished by horizontal slabs, floors and ceilings, and covered in glass. They are placed at angles facing the Lakeshore Drive, while perpendicular to one another. Built on regular rectangular plans, they are 26 stories high, with gray aluminum window frames. Observed from any angle, the alternating surfaces of steel and glass realize spatial effects, going from an opaque metal to the reflecting light of glass, while from inside one has the perception of a free lookout towards the lake and the city. And I remember an experience here. The 50s are years of experimentations on the typology of skyscraper. Look at this project by Frank Lloyd Wright, a project for a 1-mile high skyscraper in Chicago also. I love this photo because this is the best proposal of a glass skyscraper, the Seagram building, built between 1955 and 1958 with Philip Johnson, who designed the interior spaces, the master, and after the master of other generation. The company, Joseph Seagram and Son, asked me to design their headquarters at 375 Park Avenue in New York. The building was unprecedented in many aspects. Seagram is a 39-story tower, 157 meters high, built on a symmetrical rectangular plan, 26 and 7 meters wide, and 46 meters long, attached to a lower building in the back. The company called the Seagram as the world's first bronze skyscraper, a monumental symbol of confidence in the strength of the industrial and business future of America. The Seagram is also remarkable in its urban context. The skyscraper occupies only part of the site. It sacrifices built square meters, thus creating an unprecedented relationship between architecture and environment in New York, in Park Avenue. It's positioned at a 27 and 40 meter setback from Park Avenue, creating a plaza of about 30 and 60 meters, paved in pink granite and flanked by a pool on each side, with trees tracing the north and south sides. The pool, the plaza, the main entrance, the trees. The core load-bearing structure of the tower is built by a concrete and steel central nucleus and steel and glass built on a curtain wall grid of 1 meter and 20 and 2 meter and 30 meters. The facades are made of bronze T-beams, holding up pink-gray glass panes that create an almost transparent skyscraper, the perfect glass tower. The different materials are juxtaposed beautifully. Dark steel and smoked glass of the skyscraper against the granite of the plaza, mirror and the fountains. But there are are further details, like the green marble bench flanking the pools, leading towards the entrance of the tower. The portico, a ground floor, shows the central structural core, clad in bright travertine marble. The lobby developed almost as a glass box, further set back from the perimeter of the seagram. It creates a portico beneath the building that almost raises it, a measurable space relating the structure with each man walking up to it. And here there is a very famous restaurant, Four Seasons restaurant, designed by Philip Johnson. After the Second World War, Mies worked once again in Europe to design the Neue Nationalgalerie, the new National Gallery of Berlin, inaugurated in 1968. The building is composed of 2 stories. The basement, partly below ground, is dedicated to the permanent collection of the museum, while the ground floor houses the temporary exhibitions and other functions. The upper floor is placed in the center of a wide podium, 110 and 105 meters long, raised above street level but accessible through 3 flights of steps, while the basement gallery develops beneath the terrace, overlooking a sunken courtyard, bringing light to the lower hall. The upper gallery forms 1 square glass-walled hall, 51 meters per side, on a structural system entirely made of iron, while the lower floors employs a reinforcing concrete structure. The upper hall is roofed by a single ribbed slab, more than 2 meters thick, held up by 8 cruciform pillars set back and symmetrically disposed to free up the corners from any support. The lower floor hosts various rooms, including library, offices, restaurant, and services. In both galleries, the structural systems allows for continuous plate glass facades, looking back at the German pavilion, as well as Fansworth House, and replicating the myth of the glass house. The architecture of Mies van der Rohe show an unprecedented interpretation of the use of metal and glass, employed as instruments to achieve the best possible articulation of construction made of space and light. Now, we want to try to understand this idea of Miesian style. In fact, the myth of glass house inspired a number of architects. Many of them have tried to follow the example of Mies architecture and offered their interpretations of a glass house that we are going to analyze. The first chapter, very important chapter of this story, is the case study house program. In 1966, the hand started in 1945, was sponsored by Arts and Architecture magazine, directed by John Intensa. This program wished to respond to the post-war building boom with design for prototype modern homes, readily affordable to the average American. The program involved 36 model houses, all realized for the Los Angeles area. They were, you can read in the yellow caption, they were commissioned to some of the most reputable architects of the time: Richard Neutra, Raphael Soriano, Craig Elwood, Charles and Ray Eames, Pierre Koenig, Eero Saarinen, and Quincy Jones. The program aimed at employing as many word-borne materials and systems as possible to better define the house of modernity. The Eames house, this is the case study house number 8. We have number for each house. Case study house number 8, it's really the Eames house, was built in 1949 by husband and wife Charles and Ray Eames for their home and studio in the Pacific Palisades, a neighborhood of Los Angeles. This house is composed of 2 glass and steel boxes, 2 glass and steel rectangular boxes. One rectangular box coincided with the home, and one the studio, while both are built on a central axis aligned with a court between the 2 structures. The houses, set against a hillside, are enclosed by 60 meters long concrete wall. The external facades are defined by a structural web of black painted steel holding panels of glass, and by red, blue, off-white, and black stucco. Gray cemestos is a new material, invented in 1937, the combination with the cement and asbestos. Cemestos and aluminium panels. The various glass panels, different for size and color, alternating between transparent and translucent panes that superimpose different effects on the facades. The Eames Charles and Ray Himes. Studio and residence are flexible and furnished differently to meet various needs, and house also furniture pieces designed by Charles and Ray Himes. Quoting Charles Himes from the magazine issue of 1945, the living room is a large, unbroken area for pure enjoyment of space, in which objects can be placed and taken away: driftwood, sculpture, mobiles, plants, construction, etc. The case study house number 21 was designed by Pierre Koenig, very young architect at this time, in 1958. A steel and glass prototypal house on the Los Angeles Hills with an attached carport. The entire house is built upon a steel framing system supporting glass panes and doors, reflecting Koenig's own remarks. The steel structure is so well detailed and joined to make exposed steel acceptable even in the living room. The main plan develops on an L-shaped plan comprising the carport, while the house is structured as a 10-meter and 30-meter rectangular plan linking the carport with the external garden in a continuous flow of space. In the center of the house, a closed rectangular core hosts the utility facilities, while two bedrooms develop on the short sides. On the opposite sides of the facility core, a larger open space holds both living room and dining room. The central utilities core allows Koenig to structure external facades as continuous glass perimeters, free from structural elements. The whole house alternates steel walls and sliding glass doors. The prefabricated steel system, as well as the simplicity of the plan and materials, were among the first elements that John Intensa underlined upon his first visit, appreciating its minimal design features. This is really publicity published in Arts and Architecture magazine, directed by John Intensa. The success of this house led Koenig to the case study house number 22, commissioned by Carlotta and Bachsthal and built from 1959 on a small lot overlooking a wonderful-looking Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And this is a very famous photograph by Julius Schulman, who photographed several case study houses. He was also the owner of a case study, Julius Schulman, a photographer of Arts and Architecture magazine. In order to exploit the site, enclosed in the Hollywood Hills, Pierre Koenig designed an L-shaped house, placing the pool and the carport on the only flat side of the site. The house is close towards the street side for privacy and stretches forward with completely open facades towards the city. Once again, Pierre Koenig employed structural steel components organized on a bigger square module. The structure is made of 30 centimeters beams and 10 centimeters H columns, and the house stretches out on pierces and cantilevers. Glass runs all the way around. Koenig, this is a wonderful photo by Julius Schulman. The case study house number 22, two girls on this terrace projected on the Los Angeles panoramic view. And in fact, we have the continuous glass walls on this house, and you can read the words by Pierre Koenig. Oh, another hero of the case study house program is Craig Elwood, but really is a name invented by John Nelson Burke. He was born in 1922. He was a self-made architect from Texas, and after he moved in California, and started his career with the case study house number 16 in Bel Air, constructed in 1952. After the career in California as an architect, Craig Elwood, or really John Nelson Burke, but Craig Elwood, well known as Craig Elwood, moved to Italy in the Tuscany Hill to become a painter. It's a very an hero of art history of 20th century. This house has a modular frame made of structural steel formed by tube columns and T-beams. A series of translucent glass panels screen the house from the street, allowing a private dimension in the interior space. In the living room, partition walls are substituted by frameless glass panels, rendering case study house number 16 as a flowing glass pavilion. With his associate, Jerry Lomax, in 1958-1961, Craig Elwood designed Dafton residence in San Francisco. The house is raised on 33 steel columns that suspend this glass house on a podium of black Mexican pebbles. The entire building relies on the criteria of case study houses: prefabrication, modular construction based on the steel structure, and fast assembly. These are the principles of the case study houses: prefabrication, modular construction based on the steel structure, and fast assembly. The Miesian inspiration of the house is translated into a white steel structure with the old glass walls immersed in the Californian landscape. The steel structure is brought outside of the whole house and supports grey glass panes, 70 centimeters wide, reaching from floor to ceiling. The architecture is carefully sought out in order to underline the structural and non-structural role of each element. The surfaces of the external skin set back behind the columns and are clad in Pentelic white marble and white plaster, so that the textural effect is not entrusted to the color, but to the different materials and to the shadows cast between frame and walls. The plan is clear in the disposition of functions and space. Lightness controls the overall outline. The central court is devoted to a pool, visible from all the rooms. The kitchen overlooks the pool, developing on its central axis, and its furniture is lined with walnut wood and marble. On the right side of the pool, an entire wing hosts the living room and dining area, lightly divided by partitions, but preserving, once again, the idea of an open, uninterrupted flow of space. This is very nice. The Weekend House, designed by Craig Elwood. It's only a project. Wish to answer to the absence of beachfront houses in California. This was devised as a roofer bridge, spanning 18 meters above the canyon. It's an impossible house. A bridge. San Luis Obispo, California, south of Los Angeles. The house develops, what's a wonderful drawing, as a huge, perfectly proportionate steel truss built on modular elements. The house is called the ultimate dramatization of living within steel structure. It's really only a bridge pointed on the landscape. It's completely suspended over the canyon, the steeless glass, with a great respect for the land and natural environment. And here also, this is a bridge house designed in 1968 for the Italian editor, house publisher, it's really house publisher and friend, Bruno Alfieri. This is a further elaboration of a homage to Mies van der Rohe, a poor steel structure painted white and left bare, covered in glass and suspended against this landscape. Many historians suppose that this is a landscape at the river. This is the bridge house. Order and discipline of the structure and integrated decoration. These are the key words of Craig Elwood architecture. And we have also the glass house by Philip Johnson, one of the most interesting interpretations of a glass house. Remember that he had collaborated with Mies van der Rohe at Seagram Building, and he designed a restaurant, a four-season restaurant, and also all the interiors. And in 1949, he designed for himself the glass house at New Canaan. The house is 16 meters long and 10 meters wide, and it is defined by two horizontal slabs, floor and ceiling, and by floor-to-ceiling glass panels, supported by a structural system made of steel piers placed at the four corners and in the midpoint of the long sides of the building. Fixed glass panes alternate sliding glass doors, creating a strong contrast with the dark steel columns. The old glass walls describe once again an almost transparent box of free-flowing space. The plan is continuous. There are no walls. The transparent room is interrupted only by a cylindrical brick volume placed inside the house. It contains a bathroom as well as a fireplace. The furniture is extremely precise. The fireplace looks toward the living room. A series of chairs surrounding a low table define the living room area, while the kitchen is placed towards the northeast corner and is defined only by closet cabinets with walnut veneer and tie-high counter. A bedroom marks the only other fixed element of the furniture. A bed facing west is divided from the rest of the glass house by another wood apparatus. None of these partitions ever reach the ceiling, as in Fansworth House. And this is a quotation by Philip Johnson, homage to Mies van der Rohe, and also other, you can see, Malevich, Parthenon, English Garden, and Romantic Movement. Another example you can read here, this example, the Italian architect Lina Bobardi, that in 1951 moved from Italy to Brazil with her husband, the writer and art collector Pier Maria Bardi, in the neighborhood of Sao Paulo, and she designed because his husband was an art collector. She designed the house, the Casa de Vidro. Casa de Vidro, Sao Paulo, sitting on top of the hill, overlooking the landscape. In the Morumbi neighborhood of Sao Paulo. The house, the square plan raised on pilotis, hosts a number of different zones and functions. Outside the main house and at a brief distance were also realized a private, separated study. The caretaker's house and the parking area on the opposite side. The main house is made of steel and glass. Two thin reinforcing concrete slabs constitute the ceiling and the bottom floor of the house. This living area of the house is suspended on slender circular columns, gray-green pilotis, letting the landscape flow beneath the building. Okay. Concrete steel box is a continuous wall made of glass planes. The house is divided in two parts. One rests on the ground at the top of the hill, and the other is suspended by pilotis. Casa de Vidro revolves around the central courtyard that separates the house in two parts by allowing a tree to grow vertically throughout the villa. On the ground floor, on the back of the house, are the warehouse, the portico formed by the pilotis, a rectangular steel and granite staircase connects the exterior with the interior spaces. Slender and essential, the staircase balances the difference in altitude between the two areas of the house, offering also a peculiar outlook toward the slope and the city. At the upper level, a continuous progression of bedrooms facing each other overlook a central narrow courtyard, and is complemented by a series of different functions, among which cleaning and laundry rooms, as well as the kitchen, made of bright colors and lined with off-white furniture and appliances. A great open space defined the living area, corresponding to the part of the house suspended on pillars. Here, on the northeast corner, is allocated the bookshelf, lined with metal furniture with glass-fronted shelves, looking toward the landscape. but the majority of the living area on the southwest side is occupied by the dining room, with traditional pieces as well as elements of Pier Maria Bardi collection. The interior space, protected by the sliding curtains, develops as a true interior. In Casa de Vidro, Lina Bobardi creates a very strong relationship between architecture, environment, and landscape. And now, moving from time, from very important architects and the new generation of Brazilian architects. This is a Rio Bonito house designed by Carla Joaçaba, a young Brazilian architect, and it's another interpretation of glass house. The house is raised on a plinth, reached through a series of steps, and is held by a structure made of two stone-bearing walls, 1 and 10 meters in thickness. The two walls support 4 horizontal steel beams, carrying the roof and floor and defining the interior space of the house, comprising within glass walls. At either side, 2 voids interrupt the roof, allowing the internal space to be filled by light, highlighting the strong difference in materials and colors. Look at this: stone, red steel beams, and glass. A new interpretation of the structural aesthetic of Mies van der Rohe. The structural stone walls serve also as access stairs to the rooftop garden. A series of functions define the interior, where the only solid enclosed block is represented by a wooden toilet block at the center, while at the right side of the toilet, the master bedroom is defined by the bed itself. It looks frontally towards the glass space of the main facade. It's protected also by a structural stone wall. The same happens with the living room and kitchen, placed on the left of the bedroom. They are equally organized in the open, further highlighting the idea of a transparent house. Another particular example of glass house, very recent, is the house designed by the Japanese architect Ken Gokuma in New Canaan, same place of Philip Johnson. Project was commissioned as an addition to an house designed in 1956. The complexity resting in the style of the existing building, that was a one-story glass-lined building and its perfectly axial symmetry. Kuma's design is devised as an L-shaped plan, communicating with the square existing building and raised on a platform. The house is a transparent construction with an open plan, built by stainless steel mesh screens that define routes and paths within the house. The structure is made of a sequence of steel slender columns, 7.5 centimeters wide and 15 centimeters depth, slender steel beams. The roof is supported by exposed wood joists. Between the steel supports, a system of smooth, insulated glazing defines the exterior facades. Following the example of existing building, Kuma's addition is built by a veranda running all around the building. Interior spaces are divided by mesh screens. Here become clearer the proportional relationship between glass screens, vertical columns, and horizontal outline of the roof. Inside, wood cladding and wood structures mark both the exposed roof and the warm, colored floors. And at last, our friend, Marcio Kogan, professor in Mantova campus of Politecnico di Milano, for Redux House, realized another interpretation of glass house in the countryside of Sao Paulo in Brazil. The one-story building, composed of two horizontal slabs, clear glass planes define the facades of the building that from the highest point of the site looks out into the landscape. Wooden panels clad the volumes, creating particular effects of light and textures. Once again, the space is transparent, but in the interpretation of Marcio Kogan, we can see the feeling of environment, of the Brazilian landscape. This is the real importance of the glass house. You can feel the local landscape from Plano, Illinois, to Sao Paulo in Brazil, to another part of the world. The glass house, inside the glass house, you breathe the natural landscape. You breathe the flavor of the architecture and his relation with the nature.